Good evening, everybody, here from Finland. And we are beginning our Dissipation of Glamour webinar number 62, I think it is. So Olivia, Tuija, and I, and all of our staff, we invite you to participate, and I'm very glad that you are here. It's an ongoing thing, and what we have decided to do is to really tackle the entire book with all of what DK wrote to his observers of reality group, the second group in the seed groups. You know how it worked out. You have the telepathic communicators, and they their instructions wound up in the book Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle. And then for the Dissipation of Glamour group, their instructions wound up in Glamour World Problem. And for the, the esoteric healing, of course, that's DK's specialty, and it's really a very large book, and a specialty of its own, some 700 pages long. And then for education, the New Age educators, education in the New Age, their instructions found their way into that book, or appeared as that book. And I guess that's really as far as he got, except to bring 3 people into the political workers. But he scattered, throughout his teaching, very many things on the political work, the destiny of the nations, let us say, and all about the New World religion when it comes to the reappearance of the Christ. Excuse me, not so much on the scientific side, although on the occultly scientific side he did number 7. And of course, psychology, he covered that in 2 great volumes. And when it comes to economics, maybe not so very much, but a little bit in Problems of Humanity. And then when it comes to the magical work, a treatise on white magic, the 10th seed group, the group of magicians, let us say with 3 people taken from each of the other 9 groups. I think that's how it was formed, and there would be 27 in that group. So whatever he laid out in Cosmic Fire and some of the earlier presentations, he eventually filled out. And whatever he did with his students in his special groups, he wrote on these subjects. Maybe economics is not so heavily weighted, maybe science is not so heavily weighted, the 3rd and the 5th rays. Well, okay, very glad that you're here, and let's just have a little alignment. We're working through the book now. It'll take us a while. It'll take us some years to do that, really. I don't know how many years. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure. It depends on how we go, but we will be much enriched by the study of this material, and should be effective, on the inner planes as a group, and individually dealing with our own glamours if we do discover them. Usually it's left to someone else to say, do you see that glamour in your nature? Because we oftentimes overlook these very things, and sometimes the name of them is not customary at all, and they're very idiosyncratic. They're very unique to ourselves. So DK sometimes had to, identify these glamours for people, because they would have no notion of what they were, and they would have to be named in such a way that they could somehow recognize this. It's so easy to overlook one's glamours, and they're not really dissipated until, somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd initiation, and you wonder even if then, the focus is on illusion at that point. But glamour and illusion are very closely related. Illusion, in a certain sense, is the control of the mind by certain massive thought forms and a general misinterpretation of the truth. And then when you start attaching your desires to that misinterpretation and you start exaggerating the value of the misinterpretation, it becomes a glamour. So the two are closely related, and where there's a glamour, there's probably some type of misinterpretation or illusion behind it. Okay, so well, we are coming together. And the silence facilitates that. And wherever we may be in time and space, which are, from another perspective, illusory, we are together in consciousness. And we offer ourselves as soul-infused personalities and as souls in incarnation behind the obvious personality fields, behind and within. And even if we can fathom it as the observer on its own plane, in this case at first the higher mental plane, we offer ourselves as an instrument to help to clarify the astral plane from the many distortions, the exaggerations, the minimizations, the wrong direction, the attraction to that which is worthless and overlooking of that which has value. You know, the whole world is plunged in glamour at the moment, and when you have a strong glamour, you believe in it entirely, you know. If you think about the religious misinterpretations, the imagining of the heaven worlds and what's going on the astral plane, it's all terribly distorted, and we have to bring in the light of truth. Not to say that we absolutely have that, you know, we have something. But we have to apply the truth as we can to the consciousnesses which really are distorting reality. And so we will work together as we usually do, and under the protection of that divine cross, very needed, this protection, because on our planet, for whom the planetary logos is still very much immersed in astrality, at least it's cosmic astrality, but it still isn't where Venus is. All of that reflects in our astral world. So we're on a non-sacred planet, and we've only taken the first initiation cosmically considered, and it's still a while before we take the second, and we know how much of the fight with glamour occurs between the first and second initiation. So that's a planet-wide problem. And it finds its way into our consciousness, you see. So we'll sound the Om, affirming our unity in offering ourselves as an instrument for hierarchy, to help clarify the astral plane and to help bring the many distortions into some kind of equilibrium and right proportion. Now we are working in the book. We've just begun, really, but it's a great subject, and we dealt last week with the idea of intuition and looking at it as synthetic understanding and related to the quality of love. You know, this is well worth rereading. I always come back to this section of the Glamour book because these are the great fundamental powers and qualities, and we have to have some kind of idea of what they really are, and these ideas have to be operative in our life. So we're getting rid of separativeness, we're getting rid of the love of the particular in its own right and looking at the love of the whole. We begin to stand beneath everything with synthetic understanding. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And we begin to tune into what's called, it's a higher Mercury function in a way, related also to Jupiter, which senses the whole, and Neptune, for which there are no barriers. We're entering the transcendental mind. And when you kind of look at this map, you basically, although this entire plane is called the intuitional plane, it's not until we reach the fourth subplane that the intuition is really active. And this assembled chart shows that intuition here on the fourth subplane. So even as we begin to penetrate the intuitive level through the Antakarana, the intuition is not fully present until we have the ability to connect with the fourth subplane. Okay. Now let's read about, I think it's Illumination is coming up. So we stopped here. The intuition as the quality, which is the major one, brings with its appearance three qualities. Illumination, that's the first. By illumination, I do not mean the light in the head. You know, this is much discussed in a treatise on white magic. And by the way, if you're interested, I have begun now to do a video commentary on the book, A Treatise on White Magic. So I finished the first hour today. Getting started is the hard part. And what are completed is the complete book of esoteric astrology, the complete book of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. The beginning of it, most of it is written, and the end is a video commentary, and then the complete book of the Rays and Initiations. The first half is written, and the second half is video commentary. So if you wish to avail yourself of these commentaries and use them in your study groups or start study groups in which some of what I say might be of value to you, then you're most welcome to do it. Okay, illumination. I do not mean the light in the head. that is incidental and phenomenal. And we don't mean extra special, we mean that which appears as a phenomenon. And many truly intuitive people are entirely unaware of this light, although the Tibetan seems to hint that it is there, even if they don't really focus on it. And it's a physical thing, physical etheric, and we're talking about a type of apprehension which lies far beyond the physical etheric nature. The light to which I refer is that which irradiates the way. Now, this word way is interesting. You compare the word way and the word path. And generally, well, we can look at the word way as if it deals with some of the lower paths, but we are told about the way of higher evolution, and that's the great way which lies ahead. Maybe we should take this just in a general sense. The path of initiation might be considered the latter part of the way. Let's see if I can get that correct. Is the latter part of the earlier way. So we're all of us treading the way, even if we're simply aspiring to something better, we are treading the way. So this is the light of the intellect. Now, interesting, the word intellect doesn't simply mean the mind. It's a capacity to see within something and tell something about it, to go within and to understand. It is the light of the intellect which really means that which illumines the mind. See, it has an interior capacity, and it's coming from within and above. We're talking about the mind held steady in the light here. It's that which illumines the mind, and in some of the Neoplatonic writings, the intellect is equivalent to the intuition. So it is the light of the, I mean, we have a different way of looking at that, you know, in our modern assessment of the mind. But in the older descriptions, intellect is a very high and perceptive penetration into whatever subject may be at hand. It's more than simply the mind. It is the light of the intellect which really means that which illumines the mind, okay? And which can reflect itself in that mental apparatus, it's coming from above, right? Which is held steady in that light. So it is as if the light of the mind is held steady in the light of the intellect, a higher capacity. This is the light of the world. Now, what can we mean by that? You know, the Christ said, I am the light of the world. The Tibetan said that Hermes Trismegistus said the same. The Buddha said the same. How do we begin identifying as light? How do we identify? And certainly we have to remove our sense of identification from the formal vehicles which we possess. Now, you know, we look in the mirror, we feel our emotions, we are aware of our minds, somehow we identify with all that. But in order to reach identification with this all-pervading light, we have to drop the lower identifications. And, you know, we also have to realize an interesting thing about light, that light, or let's put it like this, that matter is light. Now that seems a strange statement, but the whole world is light, and all things can resolve into light. And that which comes forth is the first matter in that sense, perceived at least by some great perceiver, if not by us. We hear about dark matter, but to some perceivers. It's dark to us, but it is perceivable to some great perceivers, obviously. And maybe we're really speaking of etheric phenomena when we're speaking of dark matter. So this is the light of the world, and can we so put to the side our normal attachment to form that when that light begins to appear in the imagination, let us say, or in a more visible sense, an all-pervading light from which all things come, that we can really identify as that. And then what would happen to our boundaries? Well, we would start being all-pervading, wouldn't we? Well, which is really the truth. The truth of our inner nature is that it is all-pervading. And yet, ultimately, it has no time and space about it at all as pure being. So this is the light of the world, a reality which is eternally existent, I suppose, when there is a universe, but which can be discovered only when the individual interior light is recognized as such. We begin to use the light that appears within us, which appears within our consciousness. This is the light of the ages, which shineth evermore until the day be with us. What is the day be with us? The ultimate day be with us is the great pralaya of any universe. And I suppose what is being said here is that this light of the ages seems to intensify for us as we begin to abstract ourselves from identification with form, becoming ever more intense until our true identity as the universal logos is revealed. Our true identity as being is revealed. This light of the ages reveals eventually being. So I'll put that down. This light of the, I'll get my capital straight, light of the ages reveals the being which we essentially are. And it is permanent within the cosmos. It is always there, and we just have to abstract ourselves from phenomenal appearance, because that's where our great mistake is being made. And this glamour that we're working on right now, of the glamour of taking the part for the whole, identifying with the part rather than the whole, is a very serious mistake, but it's totally natural because it's needed at first. We have to master the part before we can begin to expand, dropping the various rings past not, before we can begin to expand into the whole. The intuition is therefore the recognition in oneself, not theoretically, but as a fact in one's experience. You know, we want to get beyond this mental theory. It's good to begin with, but it's not final. In fact, as a fact in one's experience of one's complete identification with the universal mind. We'll take a look at that. Of one's constituting a part of the great world life, which suggests being to me, and of one's participation in the eternal, persisting existence. And I want to say, which ultimately we are. It's not just that we are a little part participating in a great wholeness. One day we have to realize, as the great Vedantins realized, that we are that wholeness. So the illumination of the mind held steady in the light, the identification with the universal mind. And where is this universal mind found? Well, maybe the lowest part of it, in a way, is what is found upon the atomic plane, the third plane down, therefore connected with mind. But if we were to look more fully, we would have to say that universal mind is found on the cosmic mental plane. But since there are many, many planes higher than the plane that we are examining at the moment, universal mind is found at the very, top of the universe. Of course, about that we can say nothing and do nothing. That's way beyond even our solar logos and maybe beyond even our cosmic logos. We're talking about a type of mind which is there from the very beginning of the emergence of the universe. But for practical purposes, we always open our mind, even on this lower level here, to the higher levels of spiritual mind in the triad and atmic mind, and eventually, as the Buddha did, we come in touch with a type of universal mind on the cosmic mental plane, just the way the Christ came in touch with the cosmic astral plane. And beyond that, I don't think we can think. This meant for the Buddha, I believe, the sixth initiation, his cosmic touch of the cosmic mind, which we can truly call, for our purposes, the universal mind. In a way, remember that the universe, the word universe, can be applied to the vast entirety, or it can simply be applied to our solar system. Such is its use. And when we're talking about the universal mind, we can even be talking about the lower and especially the higher mind of our solar logos. That would be far enough for us to think of. Now, so that's illumination. And we do need that entering of light into our consciousness, which reveals that which has always been present, but of which we have been unaware. And via the Antakarana, this revelation of what is seen in the triad can descend into our ordinary consciousness, or our ordinary consciousness can ascend into these revelations. We're heading into a much broader, wider, deeper world of energies that are always present, but which we are too obtuse to recognize, too insensitive. But the Antakarana will sensitize us, and more the revelation of the hidden, which is always present, the revelation of the hidden, which is always present, will come to us. So our studies in occultism are a lot about deepening our perceptions and our perceptions, the perceptions of things which are intuitively grasped on the higher planes. Maybe I can go a little further here today. I'd like to, if possible. We can see, and we'll leave love for the next time we get together in a week. Understanding. Well, we're familiar with the idea of loving understanding. It's a great second-ray quality. And when we talk about standing, we're talking about the feet. We're talking about Pisces. We're talking about this subtle Piscean energy, which is, in a way, pervading all things and yet is abstracted from all things. Pisces can take us into the depths of glamour and distortion, or it can bring the light of the world, really, an incredible clarity. Let's see if I'm correct on that. If we go to esoteric astrology, I think it's around page 329 or right in there somewhere. Yeah. By the time we get to 330, we have Pisces, the light of the world. This is the light, revealing the light of life itself, the light of being, the way being becomes visible to us. It ends forever the darkness of matter. Well, in the beginning, Pisces is nothing but matter, and it cloaks all true realization. But after a while, we have this amazing revelation of the light of the world, the light revealing the light of life itself. What is life? Sometimes we can call it vitality, but I think life is more than will. It's more than love. It's more than mind. It is being itself. Uh, it is that which emerges out of latency, out of invisibility to make a manifest universe. And somehow Pisces is so sensitive that in the last analysis, the revelation of this amazing something that we are will come through Pisces, which is truly the Christ's sign, the sign of all great sensitives, even though they use other signs. He's using Aquarius now, but fundamentally, the sign of all great sensitives is Pisces. Okay, a little more then. So understanding, standing under, this must be appreciated in its literal sense as that which stands under the totality of forms. It's that to which all things are related and from which all things come or are emanated. Each one of us is the entirety masquerading as the part. Of course, then when we get identified with the part, we have a glamour. We have an illusion which becomes a glamour, a mistake which becomes something we are attracted to, and we don't find the truth because of that attraction. So it stands under the totality of forms and is very, very subtle. So we have to have sufficient understanding to detect this pervading something out of which all things arise. Now, here's a kind of a description. It connotes the power of recession, pulling back, prescinding, it's sometimes called, the power of reception or the capacity to withdraw from one's age-long identification with form life. Well, when Pisces begins, there's this go forth into matter, and you're plunged into total identification with whatever you feel and see and encounter. And the veiling of the nature of life and being is complete, nor is there sufficient capacity to extract oneself from it. We just have to experience that. So anyway, we withdraw from our age-long identification with what we usually think we are, and this is, in the yoga methods and means, it's pratyahara. I think it's the fifth of the means. We gradually pull back until we become the true observer of that with which we once identified, and Pisces really can help us do that. So I would like to point out that this withdrawal is comparatively easy for those who have much of the first-ray quality in them, but there's a problem with that because it can short-circuit the purpose of this withdrawal. It's easy for first-rate people to resist the tendency to identify themselves with others, and of course that's something that they have to learn. The first-rate really has to learn the energy of love, and this is brought out by the Tibetan. It's very hard for thorough first-rate people to really understand that love, but they do stand there and suffer and learn to love. And if you really want to read about that, there's a wonderful description in Esoteric Psychology 2, where we're dealing with the techniques of integration for the first-ray types, namely first-ray souls, and maybe it can be extended to first-ray monads. So first-ray people can do that. To have true understanding is a little different from the preliminary first-ray approach. To have true understanding involves an increased ability to love all beings, and yet at the same time to preserve personality detachment. Now, That's a second ray. That's a second ray ability. If we want to go into white magic here at some point, let's see if I can find this. Yes, I think it's in a treatise on white magic, and it says, you'll see what I mean. Enter thy brothers. Enter. Oh, that's a they. Okay. Thy brothers. Here it is. And it's telling us what we have to do, We enter thy brother's heart, yes, but we keep detached, right? We enter thy brother's mind, yet keep detached. Okay. And finally, we blend with thy brother's soul, and there we can have the right kind of blending and fusing, but we cannot, before that, attach ourselves to the emotional body of our brother. We cannot attach ourselves to the mind of our brother. So these, I remember back in the old days, I became a secretary in the arcane school, and it was in the early 70s, a long time ago. And these, in the secretarial manual, these rules came through, and I was very interested in them, and I still am. So these are three foundational rules as to how we are to treat our brother and love, think, and yet remain detached. So page 320 of a treatise on white magic, you might want to consider these things because they're very important. Okay, so we preserve personality detachment. We understand, we love, but we're not blending personality with personality. Now, he goes on to say this detachment can be so easily founded on an inability to love. That's oftentimes, at first, the first ray method. Although he does interestingly talk about, don't associate yourself with first ray people who have too much love. That's kind of a interesting idea that, maybe a first ray soul, but a second ray monad or something. He's telling us who should be running these various departments, and he says something like that. I forget the full statement, but it surprised me because he showed essentially a second ray type who had a first ray soul and a fifth ray personality or something like that, and but essentially a second ray type. This detachment can so easily be founded on an inability to love, in a selfish concern for one's own comfort, lest you feel too much and become uncomfortable, physical, mental, or spiritual, and above all, emotional. First ray, this is one of those statements that seems to stand out. First ray people dread emotion and despise it, but sometimes they have to swing into an emotional condition before they can use emotional sensitivity in the right manner. So if you're a first ray soul, think about this. But of course, the fundamental first ray type is the monad on the first ray. Fundamental second ray type is the monad on the second ray. That's your primary ray. So understanding involves contact with life as an integrated personality, because, think about the psychologists, they do have the solar plexus open so they can deal and understand the astral condition of those they wish to help. Plus egoic reaction to the group purposes and plans. So we don't leave the personality entirely out of it. We can use it as a sensitive mechanism, but to avoid merging and blending as a personality, instead we merge and blend as a soul. It connotes personality-soul unification in the understander. Hopefully we have that soul-infused personality increasingly. Wide experience and a rapid activity of the indwelling Christ principle coming from the Buddhic plane, we know. Intuitional understanding is always spontaneous. Where the reasoning to an understanding enters, it is not the activity of the intuition. It may be good, you maybe arrive at something correct, but there is what Master Moria calls straight knowledge, or the immediate apprehension of the condition as it is, and one doesn't have to go step by step and piece by piece to see it. Now, the danger is you may have a psychic hunch about things, and it may not be accurate, and it may be immediate, and it may not be really the intuition. So do we understand a little better the idea of understanding? And when we look at phenomena and what DK calls the phantasmagoria of the world, including, he says, associated persons, do we sense that something that stands beneath, stands within, stands under, pervading all, and from which all things have emerged, have materialized, have become phenomenal? In other words, do we understand the noumenon rather than just the phenomenon? My old friend there. Okay. Do we understand the noumenon from which phenomena arise? So none of these is particularly easy. We don't want to complicate it, but it requires sensitivity, subtlety, refinement, and not getting taken in by the immediate phenomenon before your face. Now, you might say that spiritual discernment is the way to go. So when we look at the various cities and psychic powers, here is spiritual, let's see, where is it? Spiritual discernment, just above that dotted line. Okay. So when we start entering consciously into the causal body, we can begin to detect that which is beyond, within, underneath, substanding the phenomenon, namely the noumenon or the noumena and the sources of the phenomena through spiritual discernment. Okay, I think, maybe that's enough for right now. We've dealt with illumination, we've dealt with understanding, and I would say in understanding, more of the heart quality is to be found. I just don't know how it's possible to have understanding without the activation of the heart quality. I sometimes use this word infuception, which means to detect this all-pervading substratum out of which all things come, but I do think the heart is very necessary to detect this, and not a specific focus on any one thing, but on the underlying substratum, which the heart reveals. Try it, work with it, see if you can detect this substratum, and see if you can stand under and beneath and within the phenomena which are reported to your consciousness. Okay, so this will be then this is the end of academic, academic reading, number 62. And our day today is the 12th of January 18, and we'll begin here, beginning of academic reading number 63. And that'll be in, I guess, in a week. I hope I'm correct here and that we're not colliding with anything. It'll be this one. All right. Now, friends, before we do our meditation, perhaps you have a thought about illumination or about understanding. And like I say, when you attach that word loving to understanding, you have a great second-rate quality. You have this ability that Christ has in extreme measure. And sometimes it indicates the heart or the heart and the head. And so when you're thinking about understanding, to think also of the word loving understanding, I think is useful. maybe understanding is not confined to loving understanding. Maybe there's various ways. But I think the heart has to be involved because the heart is this organ. The heart is the soul, really, and it detects very subtle strata out of which more obvious things come. So, your thoughts, your questions, thoughts, whatever may come to you, if anything does, if we want to deal with anything, if you want to look at something particular, we can do that. In what we've been dealing with. We dealt first with intuition, and then we're dealing with that which is included in the intuition: illumination, understanding, and love. And we're trying to get an esoteric understanding of what these qualities, these abilities really are, not just the ordinary understanding. Every time you use a word that has esoteric significance, you almost have to pause and see at what level you're using the word, because the same word can be used at many different levels. So, any thoughts, anything you'd like to discuss? And here is Vera, and okay, so let's see, Vera. Yeah, you can. Yep, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Michael. My question is different from the topic discussed, and it comes from Cosmic Fire, page 913, and there is a comment about guardian angel.
Oh, goodness.
Are we
yes.
supposed to understand it? Is it a separate entity from the solar angel?
It's as much of the solar angel as can manifest in any one incarnation. This is how he describes it at some point. So maybe later, maybe not at this point, he describes it that way. The guardian angels of the race, each family has its guardian deva, but the solar angel manifests through a white deva, which embodies as much of the solar angel as is pertinent to that particular incarnation as may be possible. So I don't know where that particular reference is, the one I'm quoting at the moment, but if you look up, let's see how many guardian angels there are here. Guardian angels. Okay, wait a second. Angels. I think what I have to do is get rid of this thing. Okay, so let's see if I can find something, and I think I'm pretty close. Do you find it? Guardian angel.
No, but it is on this page somewhere.
Okay, here it is. This is Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, a glimpse of the guardian angel, who is the dim reflection of the angel of the presence, the solar angel, which walks with each human being from the moment of birth until death, embodying as much of the available light as the man at any given moment on the path of evolution can use and express. So I think that's a very important definition in the relation of the guardian angel to the solar angel, and that's on page 357 of Esoteric Psychology 2. It's a glimpse. A glimpse can come. He's talking about the dweller and the angel and what you see. A dim reflection, although active in the life of man, protecting, obviously, a dim reflection of the angel of the presence, and even the solar angel is so great that it cannot be fully embodied in the egoic lotus. It's a much greater being. The angel of the presence is as much of the solar angel as can be embodied, and then the guardian angel is as much of this angel of the presence as relates to a particular life, and as much as can be absorbed. So, who knows what is this relationship between the various orders of devas, but they seem to be able to infuse themselves in the next lower type of deva and become effective in that way. So I would definitely look at this one. Do you see another definition that looks good to you?
No, I came across just with these two one which you just presented yourself. So yeah, so okay, thank you very much.
This is a good one. This is a good one, and it's one that I seem to remember and somehow relates the angel of the presence and the guardian angel in as clear a way as possible. I mean, maybe we've all sensed this guardian angel at various times. You know, there are certain parameters to each life, and there's a certain plan. And we've heard of people being protected mysteriously in very dire circumstances. You know, walking out of terrible car wrecks unscathed and all that kind of thing. This is an active presence which is working to preserve the plan which the solar angel, angel of the presence, has created for that human being. Okay, Vera. All right.
Lovely,
there's a lot to learn. A lot to learn for all of us, for sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other thoughts, friends? Other thoughts? Anything that you want to? Here we go. We have Frederick. Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
Illumination is an awareness process of the light. Frederick, would you like to elaborate on that just a little bit? What you might mean there?
Yes. Yes, it was about the beginning, about illumination. That means in Japanese we have satori. That means
Satori.
It seems that it's a awareness issue. That means to become aware of the intuition and to become a mirror. Is it something like that?
Sounds good. You know, this
mirroring is important.
The satori, or however we pronounce it, the enlightenment, the illumination. These are all words for the third initiation. You know, it can be approached in the Zen manner. It can be approached on any one of the rays, but a great light breaks forth, which is essentially a combination of sun, Venus light. It's part of the light supernal, and there is a real illumination. We might say the first solar initiation involves the satori, the illumination, the enlightenment, you know, the transfiguration, whatever you want to call it. It's a great increase of the light, and it reveals for the first time the presence of the monad in a way that is not just theoretical, the living presence of the one, not the way it will be revealed as we ascend, but the very first glimpse of this true oneness is coming at that time in the satori. And I might say a major blow, and maybe, well, I'll just call it a major blow against the great heresy of separateness. That we can expect at the first solar illumination. And that's why, you know, the Zen masters, they're so Vulcan, they're so hard on the people who cannot get out of the reasoning mind because of the kind of separation that reasoning mind can produce when not used in the proper manner. I think, you know, Zen is not the path for me. I read a lot about it, you know, and it's not that I don't mind being hit over the head occasionally, but, you know, I think it's a very first-rate path. And the Tibetan presents a different path, and there are different paths as we go along. Eventually, the unity of things is really revealed at the third degree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you. Okay. Other thoughts, friends. Other thoughts. Don't be shy. You know, whatever may come up for you, whatever you'd like clarification on. I mean, look, I don't say I can clarify everything, but somehow we can get closer. You know, I think if obviously it's a long process. You know, we're here in a wonderful book, and really the Tibetan has written only one book, and even after the third installment, which is coming up following 2025, and which began with Blavatsky, we'll probably say he wrote one big book. That's what I call spherical study. You're able to get from any place in the books, in the studies, to any place else by a direct line. until everything is related to everything else, and you have this huge sphere of light, which the Tibetan has delivered with the sanction of hierarchy. We're very, very fortunate to be the recipients of this intensity of light, and let's do our best in the next 7 years before the great conclave to absorb and apply all that we can. It's a big challenge, and if we happen to think it's business as usual, it's not. It's not business as usual. The challenges will be immense. So, all right. Anything else, friends, that you want to discuss? Am I missing anybody? You don't need to be whatever. Okay. Or Bibi. Okay, I see you there, and there you go. Go ahead, Bibi. You can speak. Well, I saw your hand anyway, and your microphone is on. Oh, maybe, yeah, now it's on. It's on. So you should be able to speak unless there's some mute function on your computer that is preventing that. So just check that out, or you can write something out if you want to, whatever. But you've got a nice green mic here, and that means you should be able to say something if you wish. Overcoming these technical things, you know. All right, we're just lucky to be doing as well as we are, given all that can go wrong. So if there's anything that you want to write out or whatever, you can do that. Okay. Well, you know, it's tremendously uplifting to study the Tibetan, and there's something about the creation of light between the various items of perception, which is tremendously energizing. You know, Mercury is not only of the mind, not only of the intuition, but it's of the etheric body. And he said, you know, for many people, the vitality of their etheric body is controlled by their mind, by the vitality of their mind, the light in their mind, the degree to which energy is coming from the intuition. This will also enhance the energy of the etheric body. I certainly find it to be true in my own case. I can feel quite maybe down, you know, and then certain thoughts come in and suddenly the energy is there. Suzanne, I see you. Okay. Oh, okay. My power went off. Oh, goodness. And just returned. Okay. I was reminded that the power of the group sustains and cannot be undone. Okay. It all holds the course. I'm sorry about the power, but I was just talking about that. How at times it seems our power goes off and, you know, we're left with a vibration, as the Tibetan says, a little lower than it should be. And then, for me anyway, and maybe, you know, for some of us, and certain great thoughts come in and they empower the etheric body. You know, so this business of reading and studying the teaching and meditating on it, it's not just a mental thing. It can bring vitality all the way through. So anyway, this will be available, Suzanne. Brett will get it up on Makara, and if you wish to listen to it, you'll be able to do that. Okay. Gret, okay. All right, friends. Well, then let's go on to our meditation, and we're working at the moment on this idea of well, it's the old identification problem. You know, it's mistaking the part for the whole. You know, if we are the light of the world, what is it that dies? You know, if we have the fear of death or fear of pain or fear of being alone or lonely or whatever, I mean, it's because of our identification. It's where we are identified. So we have to change our identification. That's kind of the purpose of this other group that we have going in an occasional manner called Identify as Being. And if I can just get myself to do it, I mean to have some more webinars on that. I think Tuija and I here are kind of creating some kind of television or radio station. Before long, we just won't dare leave the house. There'll be so many broadcasts. But okay, the teaching is supposed to go out over the radio. Well, we know what the radio is now, don't we? We have the enhanced vision of what the radio is. So okay, it is all of our means of telecommunications. So let's get into our meditation. Oh, and by the way, I want to say that tomorrow morning, we've been looking at this. We've had some academic work on the science of triangles. I realize that it's very occasional, and but there have been 5 programs already on the academic side of the science of triangles. And basically what we're doing is we're looking at the way the larger triangles are occurring cosmically, solar systemically, planetarily, and microcosmically within man. And that is a section of about 100 pages that is found within esoteric astrology. Now, admittedly, it is the big picture. And in order to be a really effective triangles worker, you don't need all that. You know, you basically need to learn how to link up with other soul-infusing personalities and feel the light, feel the love, the goodwill, and use the great invocation as a word of power. This will do it, plus your active imagination. You can do the job that way, but I think it's very interesting to see how very extensive this science of triangles really is. And Tuija and I have been looking at this and realizing it's been a while. You know, I got myself sick during the summer. It's been a while since we've been able to deal with that and move on, not at a really fast pace, okay, because it's so deep, but it will certainly expand the mind, and it will certainly show us how the science of triangles applies with the super constellations, with the zodiacal constellations, with the planets, with the kingdoms, with the chakras, all arranged in triangular formation. So that's tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I think that that's GMT. And if any of you are alive at that point, I think Brett has that here. I think so. Is that correct, Brett? I think so. Yep, 5 a.m. GMT. Okay. All right, he says you don't need to register again if you've already participated. Anyway, just read that in the chat box and you'll see if you want to join this larger, maybe somewhat academic discussion. And we hope also to have a little bit of triangles meditation as well, as it's always good to remind ourselves of our triangles network. Maybe some of you have a sheet of paper in which all your triangles are written out, which definitely helps. And maybe if you just have a few triangles, you can just remember what they are. But we are trying to help the world now, and it really needs it. And the triangles network is one of the preferred means. As DK says, it's a work which must go on, must go forward. Okay. All right. So in the silence, we all come together again. And it is as if we are one field of consciousness. And whatever touches our field is available to all of us. We have that invocative aura, which connects us with the soul realm, an energy we will use as we seek to overcome the distortions so prevalent on the astral plane. Now we will use the protective formula. This is what's called the cross of divinity. It's a sort of a long arm cross involving the eyes. And it's really necessary to keep that illumined when we do this work. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And the light for the individual and for the group shines through that long-armed cross of divinity. Now our preparatory stages, we merge three lights. We lift the light of matter to the mental plane. We see the light of mind on the mental plane merging with the light of matter. The light of vitality, we might say, etheric, physical. Building up the power to create our beacon. And we bring down, in meditation, we contact the soul light. It's a real thing, the light of the soul. Maybe focused somewhat above the head. And we bring it down, fusing the two lesser lights with the soul light. Use our imagination. Three lights are one. And we use the following mantra, followed by the sacred word. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So here is our triple light, three as one, and we're preparing to send it forth as a great searchlight onto the astral plane, which we imagine. This light can search out glamour, can destroy or dissipate glamour. This is how we conceive of this light, which we have individually, particularly through the Ajna Center, and which we have as a group, however we want to visualize that. The beam goes forth. So, this is the formula, which we say aloud. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. The light of day is the light of Scorpio. It's the light associated with the intuitive plane and as much of the intuition as the soul on its own plane can appropriate. The world of meaning is the world of the soul, wherein all things find their right interpretation within the many relationships which consciousness can conceive. So from above and using the Ajna Center, using the triple light, this beam of detection and this beam of destruction and manipulation of the right kind, we work, but first we strengthen with the spiritual will our beam, because we want this beam to be irresistible, effective. And we think of the spiritual will. Its source, of course, is the very height of the universe, but, you know, from the monad practically considered, the atmic plane, the jewel in the lotus, the synthesizing petals, one of the sacrifice petals particularly, this spiritual will. And we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And our goal is not mistaking the part for the whole. So many of us are attracted to and captured by the small part. And we think it's everything, and we do our best to preserve it. I'm thinking about, you know, the nationalism of some countries. It's just the part. It was Deutschland über alles, you know, Germany over every other nation. It's America first, all of that glamorous partiality, captivated consciousness, captivated by the part, putting so much emphasis on the part that the whole is forgotten, humanity is forgotten, the community of nations is forgotten, as we distort the picture by emphasizing the part. And our personality is the part too, not the wholeness, which if we retract pratyahara, we will discover. So our glamour that we're working on, mistaking the part for the whole, being so attracted to the part that we overemphasize its place and we get a distorted picture, whether it's a distorted picture of our nation or of the importance of our personality, the little self. We're all guilty of this to some degree, but we can all extract ourselves from it as well. And so we use these words of power. And as we do, we exercise our beam and we see the glamours, the veils, the distortions, the clouds, whatever. They are detected, they are weakened, they are dissipated. We see this happening. As we say, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of emphasizing the part over the value of the whole. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life, the vitality, sustaining this glamour of emphasizing the part over the whole. And what we'll do is work in our own way, purposefully, with intensity of purpose, seeing this glamour vitiated. It cannot appear, it cannot affect humanity. It is destroyed because the vitality which sustains it is taken from it and it is destroyed. So, 5 minutes. We all use the phrase, the one humanity, so often. But how much energy sustaining a tiny ring pass knot has to be broken, released, liberated, and the ring pass knot expand and expand towards the group, the many groups, and the one humanity before we can meaningfully say the one humanity. Otherwise it's just one of those things we say. So there is a type of force which works at holding our tiny ring pass knot in place, and those forces must be broken so that according to law and due process, the ring pass knot can expand, first the group, then the groups, humanity, the one. It's a process. And then we will not mistake the part for the whole. And so we withdraw our beam of revelation, our beam of dissipation. We withdraw it to the mental plane, and we turn it off temporarily. We'll get used to working with this beam individually and as a group, and clearing the way for an undistorted astral plane in which the energy of Buddhi, of love wisdom, can be absorbed, reflected, expressed. And realizing we have done a little work to help the condition of this, what he calls major plane of illusion, using illusion in the generic sense, we will sound the Om 3 times for each level: mental, emotional, etheric, physical. Okay, thank you everybody, and tomorrow we have a busy day in terms of the Ask program. In the morning, the discussion, the more academic discussion on the science of triangles. In the evening, the soul of nations and dealing with crises in the world. There are plenty of them. And then Sunday at 5 p.m., we have attracting resources for hierarchical purposes. So hope you can join us. We'll try to be letting you know about all the different broadcasts which we have, the regular ones and the additional ones depending on the calendar, you know, and the full moon cycle and other cycles. Thank you for joining us, and Olivia and Tuija and I wish you the very best penetration into the subtleties of esotericism so that we can approach closer to the hierarchy and be more useful to humanity. Bye for now.